Right, good morning everyone. We're just a little after time. Welcome to the Community Safety Committee. Firstly, apologies for absence. We know Councillor Turner is unwell and I've not heard yet from Councillor Corden, so he may make a mad dash through the door shortly. Any declarations of interest from anyone? No? Then just before I move on to minutes, I thought the committee might like to wish Bryn good luck in his retirement from us. He's actually not fully retired. He's gone to Jersey to be deputy. What is he?
Deputy Fire Chief.
Deputy Fire Chief there. So I think it's a bit of a semi-retirement, but put on record our thanks for everything he's done for the committee, and also welcome Tom, who's interim taking over. So I'm sure Tom will slip in very nicely. He's got reports to bring to us today. So, yes, I thought members might like to know that. Thank you, Damien, for updating me. Item 3 is the minutes. Are there any... I wasn't here. Thank you, Nick, for taking that meeting. Any questions, comments on the accuracy of the minutes? Are we happy to accept them?
Yeah.
Yep, perfect. And then into the meat, we are on item 4, service delivery performance, which is pages 11 of your agenda. And Damien, are you happy to start?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Members will receive the paper. It's quite a hefty report. You'll be aware, because of the cancellation of the previous Community Safety Committee earlier in the year, where we would normally report last year's entire data, we've brought that together. So we've got all of the data for 2023-2024, and then we've also got data for this year to date as well. So I will hand over to Andy, first of all, for the response elements, and then Tom will take us through the prevention and protection data. So hand over to Andy.
Thank you. Okay, so as Damien says, it's slightly different format to what we usually have, which is why it's bigger, because of the annual summary as well. So I will start with that. So during 23-24, the service attended a total of 10,595 incidents. Now this was actually a 6.6% decrease on the previous year, which was largely driven by a decrease in the number of fires we attended. We actually attended over 30% less fires, which was basically because of that really hot, extreme weather we experienced in the summer of 22, where our incidents spiked. In terms of other types of incidents, we did see a slight increase in special service calls, nearly 4% increase there, and then nearly close to 8% increase in false alarms last year. Now, a breakdown of the incident types attended in 23-24 is what's shown in the first figure here, and as we often report, again in 23-24, the incidents did follow the typical pattern of peaking in the springtime, plateauing through the summer, and then slightly reducing over the autumn and the winter. Special service calls peaked in October and January last year, which relates to the Storm Babette and Storm Henk, which we had heavy attendance at, and false alarms over the year averaged, throughout the year averaged between 336 and 490 each month. Now figure 2, which is over the page on page 13, shows a breakdown of incidents by district during 23-24. Now the city of Nottingham, not unsurprisingly, experienced the most incidents with over 3,000 last year, and Rushcliffe the least at 789. Now table 1 under 2.4 shows the change in incident numbers per district. And so this is the change between 22-23 when we compare it to 23-24. So whilst Broxton and Rushcliffe experienced slight increase in the numbers they attended, all other districts saw a reduction in the numbers, with the most significant reductions being in Mansfield and in Newark and Sherwood. Now moving on to this year, so between the 1st of April and 31st of August 2024, which is the reporting period for this report, we've attended 4,621 incidents. Now this actually represents a slight increase in what we experienced in the same period in 23-24, and would suggest that we're going to probably attend in the region of 10,750 incidents this year. Now a breakdown of incidents by priority type is shown in figure 3. Now just to remind councillors that when we talk about P1 incidents, we're talking about those most serious incidents that pose an immediate threat to human life or pose a risk of severe human injury. When we talk about P2 incidents, these are incidents that pose a serious hazard and a high risk threat to the environment, society, property or heritage. And our P3 incidents, which are the majority of incidents we attend, pose potential hazard to human life, the environment, society, property and heritage, but they have a lower risk to human life. So what figure 3 shows us is a breakdown of incidents we attend, and whilst P1 and P2 incidents remain relatively consistent throughout the year, 23-24, a higher number of P3 incidents were attended in the spring and summer months, which is the typical pattern for fire and rescue services. Now moving on to 2.7, a key CRMP target is that all emergency incidents will be attended in an average of 8 minutes. Now this is from the first appliance being mobilised by our control function to actually reaching the scene of the incident and booking in attendance. So we had a slight improvement on what we'd experienced in 22-23 last year, but the average attendance time for the service last year was 8 minutes and 14 seconds, so it was slightly outside of our CRMP commitment. Now there are several factors as to why this is. Now one of them being that there was a lot of mobilisations outside typical turnout areas for stations, particularly during the periods of flooding, as mentioned earlier, those Storm Hanks and Storm Babette attendances. Clearly that increases travel times for clients to get to and has an impact on the overall stats. And we also had some software issues related to the introduction of new appliance data terminals. So these are the information hubs that sit on the appliances, and we had some challenges over software changes to that, which did have an impact on turnout times. Now, we've previously spoken about we invest heavily in this area because it's a real key piece of information source for crews. So the performance of the MDTs are a real key focus for us. And what is actually quite pleasing in 2.8 is you can see the improvements that we've now had, that we've overcome these challenges with the MDTs, and our attendance time between April and the end of August this year has dropped down to 8 minutes and 1 second. So a fairly significant improvement as to where we were last year. Now, I move on now to talk about on-call station availability, which is a real key area of focus for us. Now, during 23-24, our on-call availability averaged 86.4%. Now, what our target is for the service is 85% availability. So last year we were above our target, which is really promising. And actually, nationally, this is an area we do very, very well. And that 86.4% availability actually puts us in the top 3 fire and rescue services nationally for on-call. However, it has to be noted that is a slight reduction on where we were in 22-23, where we were actually at 87.1%. So we had a slight reduction in availability, but still significantly above our target and significantly well placed nationally. Now, figure 5 under 2.10 shows a breakdown of on-call availability per station last year. Now, we set a minimum standard for on-call. We've got 16 on-call sections. We set a minimum availability standard of 70%, and then the overall collective availability of 85%. Now, Southwell, at literally 69.95%, was the only station that fell slightly below that 70% availability. 10 sections achieved above average, above that 85% target, with the highest levels being experienced at Hucknall, Warsop and Stapleford. Hucknall and Warsop in particular were just short of being 100% available, which is a really, really significant achievement of those stations. Now, in April 2024, we introduced a new dual employment policy. Now, what we have in the service is some of our whole-time firefighters also perform the role of an on-call firefighter. Approximately a third of our on-call staffing is made up by dual employees. Now, what we did in April 24 is we introduced a new dual employment policy. Now, this was really to ensure that we comply with the working time regulations 1998, but also to ensure that our staff members are having sufficient rest periods between switching between whole-time shifts and on-call availability. So we've introduced this new policy to mitigate any risk that's potentially posed by firefighters working too much and being exhausted. So it's a key new policy that we've introduced. However, it has had a slight consequence on on-call availability. So between April and August this year, our on-call availability has dropped to 82.5%. So we now just fallen slightly below our target of 85, which is a consequence of the dual employment policy, but it was a consequence that we anticipated, and we knew that would happen through modelling that we've done. Now, to mitigate that, what we have is our on-call support team, which is a team made up of whole-time firefighters, which we send out to different on-call sections every day to enhance their availability. So we have a team that's led by a watch manager, and then there has 4 crew manager positions in. And those crew managers get sent out to stations where we know there's a deficiency on a day to increase their availability and keep them on the run, in effect. So what we now have is that team is now fully established, and there's a lot of scrutiny on that team to try to push the on-call availability back up to 85%. So we're hopeful that over coming months, that on-call availability will increase back towards that 85%. Now, on-call availability is, as I say, a very, very key focus for us, and the recruitment of new on-call firefighters is a big focus, and a lot of energy goes into that. Now, what I am pleased to report is we've just started a new on-call trainees course, which began with 13 firefighters during August, and we have a further 12 are scheduled to join us in January. The report says 11, we've actually got 12 now scheduled to join us in January. Now, the beauty of this is it means that having these courses twice a year, which we're managing to fill with new trainees, is balancing any levers from the on-call and hopefully enabling us to maintain that availability. So again, nationally, we're bucking the trend a little bit with on-call in terms of being able to entice new firefighters into joining us. To provide a longer-term overview of on-call availability, station availability, that is shown in figure 6. So that literally just shows where we've been over the last 5 years, each quarter, in terms of on-call availability. The line at 85% is obviously our target, what we're aiming for, and the vast majority of quarters you will see that we are above that period, that level. Now, every quarter when we deliver this report, we have a specific focus on Retford. It's what members have asked for us to do previously. Now, that is because Retford became a day shift crewing station a couple of years ago. So the importance of the on-call function there is elevated to an extent. So what happens at Retford is that we operate 1 whole-time and 1 on-call appliance between the hours of 8 AM and 7 PM. And then we aim to have 2 on-call appliances available between 7 PM and 8 AM in the morning. Now, in 23-24, Retford day shift crewing reported significantly worsening availability compared to the previous year. Over the 24 hours, 1 on-call appliance was available for 76.7% of the time, and previously in 22-23 that had been available for 87.5% of the time. During the daytime hours, 1 on-call appliance was available 63.97% of the time, and again that was a significant drop from where it had been the previous year at 77%. During the evening and night time, 7 PM to 8 AM, at least 1 on-call appliance was available 92.8% of the time, and 2 on-call appliances were available just 21.6% of the time. And again, both of those were slight drops from where we have been in 22-23. Now, there have been some improvements this year between April and the end of August. Over the 24 hours, 1 on-call appliance has been available at Retford for 78.2% of the time. Between 8 AM and 7 PM, 1 has been available 6% of the time. Then between 7 PM and 8 AM, 1 appliance has been available 93.6% of the time, and 2, 27.4% of the time. Now, this shows really the significance of, if we lose a key employee from an on-call section, whether that's a supervisory manager or a driver, for example, it can have a real knock-on big impact on the availability of that crew. So again, this is something we try to mitigate through our on-call support team and through recruitment. Now, moving on to the whole time, Table 2 under 2.19 shows the percentage of time each of our 14 whole-time appliances have been available in 23-24. Now, our appliances can become unavailable due to things such as mechanical fault, servicing, insufficient crewing levels, replenishment of contaminated PPE, out-of-county training, or for crew welfare. When an appliance has been taken off the run for in-county training or for prevention and protection activities, it's not deemed to be unavailable, because if we need to recall it at any time, we can. Now, the service's target is for 98% whole-time availability, and this has been achieved for every single appliance within the service, which is pleasing. So, Above target hold time availability has continued this year between April and August, where collectively our hold time fleet has been available 99.3% of the time. We now move on to metrics related to our joint fire control. So a key part of our ongoing commitment is to ensure resources are mobilised to emergency incidents in a timely manner. Now, under 2.22, the first metric we look at is the percentage of 999 calls that are answered within 7 seconds. The target for this is 96%, and the performance during 23-24 was slightly below this target at 94.2. However, the first completed quarter 1 in 24-25, you can see from the table that the performance has improved again back to that target level of 96%. Now, the second metric that we look at is call handling time for those P1 and P2 incidents. So as I described earlier, those most serious incidents that we attend. Then the target for these is that the call is handled within 86 seconds. So the time that that control operator takes to take all the information they need from the caller before they mobilise the appliance, 86 seconds is the target we put on that. During 23-24, the call handling time averaged 81 seconds, so below target, which is really pleasing. And again, that has improved further during quarter 1 of 24-25 to just 80 seconds. The final metric we look at for joint fire control is around our mobilisation system availability. Now, the target for this is 99%. In 23-24, the system availability was slightly below this target at 97.3. However, during quarter 1 of this year, again, we've seen a significant improvement and now above target at 99.5. Now, I don't want to sort of alarm anyone with this, because when we talk about system unavailability, I think people will almost immediately think about, well, does that mean we can't mobilise fire appliances? That's not what this really means. When we talk about system availability, it could be something as simple as like losing mapping or losing the ability to connect to Wi-Fi. It's normally quite more minor things that we class as system unavailability. So just to put any minds at ease, really. That is the response element of the report.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah. Has anybody got questions, comments for Andy on this section of the report before we move on to the next bit? Yeah, Nick.
Yeah, I think we've seen there's some things when you look at it look a bit concerning, like the last item, for example, there, and some of the statistics around Retford. It looks like we're making improvements. Is a lot of that down to you're saying some of it's down to staffing, some of it's also down to the software we've been using to update?
Yes, so we, in terms of the attendance at incidents, yeah, we introduced new software for our data terminals, which we had some challenges with that around the introduction of it, and it did lead to some slower mobilisations or some crews receiving the mobilisation notification later. So a lot of work was put into rectifying that. So over the winter 23-24, and we're now at a stage where we've got sort of full confidence in the data terminals again, which is manifesting itself in the improvement in attendance times again.
And early on when we were talking about the number of incidences, because some of the statistics seem quite straight extreme in terms of drops. I mean, which is a good thing. I mean, in Mansfield, 20% fewer, 17.4% fewer in 2.1 in terms of 2.4. Sorry, in terms of the incidents. Do we know why that is?
The big factor in that was it's comparing 23-24 to 22-23, where we had that really extreme summer where we were close to 12,000 incidents in 22-23, which was all led by the extreme heat that summer, the amount of P3 like forestry fires we were attending, and incidents like that. So you can note really that the stations that have seen a very significant drop there, such as like Mansfield and Newark and Sherwood, are stations which are located in areas that suffered a lot of those kind of P3 heat-related wildfires during 22-23. So what has in fact happened is during 23-24 their calls have probably dropped back down to the level we would anticipate and expect. So although it looks like an extreme drop, it brings them back more in line to what they would have had in 21-22, 20-21 and so on.
No, that makes sense. As soon as you say forest fires now, I think, well, obviously it's that area. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. No, thank you.
Thank you.
I've written down exactly those points, Nick. That's why I was smiling. That's why I was smiling. Anwar, yeah.
Sorry, most of the question answered by Nick. I was going to say, like the false, I mean, we just wasting our resources like false alarm, isn't it? Like most of, so are we going to do something about it? So
One of the standing items last year at this committee was around our approach to unwanted fire signals, and there's a paper scheduled for next committee meeting which will update you on that. It is a real area of focus here, but also nationally. I think nationally we've seen a 20% increase in the number of unwanted fire signals, which is what they call them. We have issues here, but it's quite a complicated area because a lot of these alarms are either in domestic settings or in high-rise residential settings in the city. So you'll be aware of the massive amount of development that's going on in the city. It is a challenge, but we do have quite a strategy in place. Tom's leading that piece of work with his fire protection team to try and make sure we continue to address them and do what we can. So yes, very much in our focus, and there's a dedicated paper coming to next committee on that.
thank you.
And what did you have a point?
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Very detailed report, very nice. Maybe a bit naive in there. Again, my question has been answered partly, false alarms. I'm looking at the with the 7.9% increase in false alarms, and the 4% increase in unwanted fire signals. What are the further steps can be taken to reduce that, and or particularly in the hospitals and the residential premises? On 99 call, emergency calls, the target for the answering 99 calls within 7 seconds, isn't it?
Yes.
We missed 9.2% against 96 target, isn't it? So what are the primary cause of this delay? Is there
I'll take the control one and I'll answer the unwanted fire signal one if you want.
Yeah, by all means. The primary cause of the delay, particularly during 23-24, was probably during those periods of high intensity for control. So where we were responding to things like Storm Henk and Storm Babette, where they'd have been absolutely inundated with calls, the staffing levels wouldn't necessarily allow them to then meet the 7 seconds. You know, they might push out slightly at those peak times where they're getting lots and lots of calls into control, which are few and far between, but they have a significant impact on the overall statistics. Because you can imagine during those periods of storms where lots of people's houses are getting flooded, there's lots and lots of high volume number of calls going into control. So that's a significant factor in 23-24 because of the impact of those storms around October and January time.
I mean, so we will be having those kind of storm definitely, isn't it, because of the what is happening above. So are we going to have some kind of policy in place or like something to?
We've actually undertaken.
If this happened, then.
Yes, we're undertaking a review of staffing and control currently, which will potentially bring, once that review's done, changes to the crewing in control potentially. But also we do have a mechanism with our control function where we can recall operators into the control function to assist when we get to those peak times when calls get very, very high.
Obviously, we will know in advance, isn't it, because of the forecast weather, so
Absolutely.
to be prepared for those kind of high volume calls.
I think just to add to that as well, so we've just entered an agreement this week with South Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service. So we have a fallback arrangement. So basically, if they're not answered within a certain period in our control room, they go to another control room who then answer the call and pass the information back to us. Nationally as well, there's it's a national issue. We have an approach called Operation Willowbeck, which is basically where if you do get widespread flooding or call inundation or something like Grenfell, where they had vast number of people requiring fire survival guidance, then there's now a process in place where BT will, through the 999 system, redirect calls to other services. So there's definitely a level of assurance there that calls won't go unanswered. The maximum amount of waiting time is 20 seconds, and that is a very long time when you need help. But as I say, Andy says we're doing a lot of review at the moment to look at this, what we can do within our joint fire control, but we have got those backup arrangements as well in place if we need them.
Are you able to cover ambulance at the point?
Yes, so the other part, so I don't know if Tom wants to come in at all in terms of the steps we're taking for it, but we are looking at a whole breadth of different approaches, and it's really difficult because within there we have all different. So you've got people at the hospital. We go to a lot of alarms at the hospital.
Very common.
Obviously, it's a high risk environment, and we need that support. We have rationalised our response. So whereas before we used to send multiple appliances, we now do that on a risk-based approach. So we might be going to the alarms, but we might only be sending one appliance rather than 3 or 4 in the past. We've done some really good work with the prisons just recently, and we've seen a significant reduction. And at the next committee meeting, we've got an overview of the changes that have been made with the prisons in Nottingham and Nottinghamshire and the impact that's had, which has been positive. But within our fire protection team, we will always take an engaging approach with businesses that are repeat offenders. However, we do have protocols in place to make sure that if we are there numerous occasions, then that often indicates a poor approach to fire safety because it's part of their managed solution. So then we will also look at formal action in terms of fire safety audits and approach with that. But Tom and his team are working on it consistently. So I don't know if there's anything you want to
and I think we're also looking at what's happening in other fire and rescue services across the sector in terms of some sort of, some sectors, some services are introducing charging policies around if we do go to these repeat calls, that there is the option for us to charge, and clearly that would be our last resort after working very, very closely with the responsible person or the building management. But looking at that, that's being introduced across the sector because this is a sector-wide issue that every building that is developed and built has alarms, more and more alarms, and they are obviously going off for some truthfully, some perhaps not quite so. So it's a real key focus, and we're looking at developing, and within this paper at the next meeting, we'll have some options to present to you around how we're going to tackle this issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andy. I think we've got some comfort that even where things aren't entirely perfect, we've got good plans in place to fix it. Right, prevention, page 19 on your agendas. Tom, if you're happy to jump in.
So within the prevention team, in 23-24 that we've completed, the service has completed over 15,000 safe and well visits, which is a significant increase across a sustained period of time, and significantly above our CRMP target, 12% above the CRMP target of 14,000. So a real positive indication of the number of Nottinghamshire's community that we're getting into, and obviously that's working very closely with our response colleagues who deliver the vast majority of those visits. And of that total number in 2.25, our data intelligence community engagement processes, which is DICE, which I've deliberately expanded there because it's one of our better acronyms maybe, helps us to focus on specific areas within our communities in a data-led approach, so really trying to focus and target our limited resources at those most in need. I think it's important that members realise, I speak about this later in the report, but we have recently restructured our entire prevention department into a community safety and engagement team to really try and broaden our approach of how we interact with communities. And because during that restructure, which has obviously been quite it's always difficult to introduce change processes into a team. We haven't delivered any DICE, but there's a clear plan in place starting at the end of this month around how we're going to use our DICE targets to address the outstanding referrals. So we have quite a few safe and wells where people have been referred to us by partner agencies, and we need to make sure we're hitting them in a reasonable time frame. So we're going to address that sort of DICE target to make sure that we can report to you next time that we're meeting those targets. In Q1 of 24-25, we've delivered over 3,500 safe and well visits. So just again, reassuring members that we are on target now. That level of performance will see us meet our CRMP target of 15,000 this year. So some really positive performance in that regard. And of those that we delivered in 23-24, 53% were to those over the age of 65 and 44% were to those identified as having a disability. So really meeting our Charlie profile of those people who we're targeting to make sure we're giving these visits to those most at risk. In 23-24 and into Q1 of 24-25, we have seen a significant increase in referrals from partner agencies, which is a really, really positive thing and indicates some of the great work that the prevention or the community safety and engagement team now are doing in terms of education of our partners and getting those details into our system so we can address them. But obviously, that has been a result of one of the tools we've introduced, which is the SafeLinks tool, which I'm sure you've seen on our website, which is a new portal through which members of the community can either self-refer and access safety information. And that's dealt with in 2.3. So in quarter one, since SafeLeaks has been introduced, 515 people have completed a home fire safety audit on that system. And of those, 342 meeting the Charlie profile then qualified for us to come and visit them in person. And we do anticipate that will increase as we embed this more robustly within our comms literature, within our partner education. One of the key duties of sort of the community safety engagement team is following a very serious event. So where we have a very serious fire that impacts people, and heaven forbid fatalities, which obviously which no one wants, we hold a serious event review group, which is called one of our SIRGs, and that ensures that appropriate learning is collated from that incident, and further actions across the service are allocated and tracked following that. So that will be things like community reassurance and engagement activities where we go to an area and offer support and encouragement, always appropriate to what the fire was and what the impact on that community is. And making sure that we are tied up in terms of our fire investigation processes, our communications processes, and obviously all with the intent eventually of satisfying His Majesty's coroner that we're doing the right things and for that report. And I can report that in 23-24, as you would expect, 100% of those incidents we held a SIRG, and we aim to hold those SIRGs immediately. So it would be the next working day generally. So if an incident happens on a Monday, well, it depends when it happens in the day, but we would hold it immediately, bearing in mind weekends, that sort of thing, when we need our teams in place. And as members will be aware, and there's a paper coming obviously later in this meeting, an innovative part of the prevention team is our occupational therapists who work closely within our persons at risk team to deliver equipment and bespoke interventions designed to help the most vulnerable members of our community, but I'll come into that in more detail in a later report. So I can report that during 23-24, we've delivered 552 fire safety, 29 road safety and 47 water safety activities, which were arranged and completed by members of the prevention team with support from our response colleagues. And these have included awareness talks to community groups, the delivery of safety packages in schools, and biker down activity, which is a key part of our road safety initiatives. The prevention team have also delivered 2 safety zone events in 23-24. One held at Ashfield Fire Station, which was attended by 449 pupils. Another 2-week event at Home Pierpont, which is attended by over 1,400 pupils from schools across both the city and county. So as members will be aware, Safety Zone focuses on the provision of safety information for Year 6 school children with support from a range of partner organisations. And we've got some clear plans in place to carry this work on within the community safety and engagement team. We've recently delivered another one at Home Pierpont, which has had some really excellent feedback from those who attended. And we're also looking at expanding how we target some of that at our more high-risk young people in terms of innovative ways of getting them to the venues and that sort of thing. So really trying to address those inequalities that some people, in terms of helping them to get there. We also, you'll see at 2.35, continue to support and educate individuals who deliberately start fires. We're through our fire setter scheme, which uses specially trained personnel to work with individuals on a tailored programme of support. So during 23-24, 130 individuals were referred into this scheme, with post-intervention evaluation showing that 80% of carers felt that the individual's risk of setting fires had reduced. And again, within the new structure, we will be looking at reviewing this year, moving towards an NFCC model in terms of basing it on sector best practice and how we can improve it moving forwards. So coming on to 2.36, members, you will be aware that we've recently restructured our prevention department in order to more effectively utilise our resources to engage with our vulnerable members of the community, interact with young people and deliver a significantly enhanced community engagement provision. So the community engagement provision will also enable prevention team to embed the delivery of positive action events and considerations amongst our diverse communities as a key part of their ongoing business as usual. So we're really trying to embed that making every contact count approach, training our personnel in how they deliver that message and making sure it's tied in very effectively with our recruitment activities and trying to get the thought into the minds of young people in terms of the fire service as a career of choice and an employer of choice, and perhaps address those, trying to, again, that will help significantly in our drive to increase the diversity of our organisation. Safeguarding is obviously a key function within the community safety engagement team, and our safeguarding officer has completed the delivery of safeguarding training to every whole time watch. And again, some of the metrics around that which flow from that are that in 23-24, 85% of the referrals made by the service were accepted as Section 42 inquiries under the Care Act 2014 by the relevant local authority, which is very far above our service target of 60%, which again can give members the assurance that that training is delivered well, is embedded amongst our operational crews, and results in the right referrals being made. So we're not wasting anyone's time with inappropriate referrals. And following on from that and related, within that same time period, 100% of our child safeguarding referrals were accepted by the relevant local authorities. So some really, really important work going on there from the people making those referrals. And again, moving on to quarter one of this year, 100% of both Section 42, and 47, which is your adult and child referrals, have been accepted. So again, that performance is maintaining. So in addition to these ongoing work programmes, the prevention team have worked with partners in the delivery of the Safer Streets project, including wrapping a fire engine, which is obviously the signs that are on the lockers on a fire engine with safety messages, and training fire crews in the delivery of advice and support around safe spaces. So really trying to address that violence against women and girls imperative. And in particular, working with partners, selected appliances travel on designated routes on the way back from incidents. In order to improve the safety of women and girls during the nighttime economy. So if an appliance goes to an incident over there, even though the quickest way might be this way, they will come back round to drive on one of these routes. And just anecdotally, I know crews have made several interventions in this regard as they've been driving down these streets, which is a really, really positive thing. And then lastly, within the prevention function in 2.41 and 4.2 around our fire investigations, so they're delivered, managed and coordinated as part of the community safety engagement team, and working closely with our police colleagues in the crime scene investigation team. 99% of our tier 2 fire investigations in 23-24 were delivered by members of Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service, with the remaining investigations were delivered by fire service personnel as part of our reciprocal mutual aid sort of agreements across borders. So sometimes if for whatever reason they could be at a different incident, they could be at another fire investigation, we will call on the neighbouring services to come and support us, and they will do the same for us if they need it. And lastly, within that section, where His Majesty's Coroner requires a report, we've delivered 100% of those reports within those timeframes. And I know from my experience as a fire investigator, they are some detailed reports that we send to the coroner, and they take a significant amount of work to make sure we're reporting the right things and get to the cause of that fire. Thank you. Do you want to take questions?
Yeah, let's do that before we get into protection. Nick?
Yeah, no, it's rather than, I think we should start by saying this is really impressive. It's for credit to the staff. We should thank them and all the work that you and colleagues have done, because these statistics are beyond that, beyond a lot of hard work. The safe and well visits, the safeguarding, the whole ethos seems to have been quite good, and I think particularly as we're operating in much more difficult times in terms of budgets and finance, and we've had some reorganisation. This shows to me, looking at the statistics, that it's worked really quite well. We don't want resting on our laurels, but I think if we look at any headlines, we should be proud of the work that's been done here, and this is a real success story. It's absolutely superb.
Yeah,
so I've got no questions, but I think we should put on record our thanks for that.
I think you're right. Thank you, Nick. Any
Yeah, I'm just going to this one small question. When you were delivering those awareness courses in community and things, did you target communities as well, like BME community and different?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And within the prevention restructure, we've employed a new head of prevention who has got significant experience within the city council, around the targeting or the work with diverse communities, work with people who have less access to some of our perhaps more traditional routes. Yeah,
but the language barrier as well. Do you have a specific training for, in different languages? Did you have?
Yes, and so I can't say that categorically, but I can get back to you on that one. But it's a clear focus for our team in terms of that community. That's why the restructure was undertaken, to make sure we are addressing how we deliver our message to our communities, making sure we're looking at innovating in terms of the methodology we're doing, and making sure we're doing the obvious things, as you just mentioned, around ensuring that we do it in different languages, different formats, and the messages we put out on the website are accessible, which is a key part of our comms team efforts. But I can certainly get back to you to reassure you around the languages available.
Thank you, and well done.
Did you have anything, Anwar?
It was a brilliant report, to be honest. I had a question on community engagement, but you already answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think I've mentioned before, and there may have been indirect invitation, but I do think members of this committee ought to make sure we're able to attend either Ashfield or Home Pierpoint to see some
We
of
would
that
love to
work.
see you. We would
Yeah.
love to welcome you there. I think
When is
Safety
it,
Zone is a
sorry?
phenomenal. So Safety
It's
Zone
next
at Home
summer
Pierpoint's
now.
happened, but
Yeah.
I'll get the details for the next one. We'd love to welcome you there. There's some fantastic work that gets done, and again, with those children, they really does make a big difference, and it's a really good example of the partnership work that we do. It's not just us. You know,
Yeah.
I'd like to take full credit, but it's a partnership thing. You know, and it's a fundamental part of what we deliver. But there's a lot of partners and a lot of work goes into it.
Yeah, I would love to come in next.
Yeah, we will.
Right.
I think it'd be good for us to
Maybe-
be educated
I
on
always,
what you
as I
do.
talked to you, Damien, like my
Yeah.
local school, they wanted something, so I let you know about it. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Very good. And on the Safe and Well visits, as Nick says, it's incredibly good, the figures. They look really positive. And it says here councils and social services and ambulances and other stuff are now starting to do referrals. Do we do that with RSLs as well, registered landlords and things, so that they know that if they've got
So
someone
again, I'd have
the
to
right
get back to you on that. So I do
Yeah.
apologise for not knowing off the top of my head.
It's all right, you're
I
in the
think
deep end today.
Oh, it's fine, it's fine. We are. It is a fundamental part of how we are. You know, we're always looking at how those referral pathways are initiated and then maintained, and then the usefulness of that data
Yeah.
that comes through, and always considering our. You know, we need to obviously, as you know, target our resources of those people.
Absolutely.
So we have lots and lots, and there is significant plans in the department over the coming year to analyse all these things, because that restructure has enabled us to free up some
Yeah.
significant people into the persons at risk team, the community safety team over here. Any referrals we get, we are setting metrics around how quickly we respond to them. So in terms of referrals from partners, it's a 28-day period. In terms of our high-risk referrals, we're setting metrics around dealing with that within a 96-hour window as a maximum. But I can assure you, as members, that if that was a high risk or very high risk, or arson referral, it would be dealt with much quicker than that. That is just in case it's a bank holiday sort of thing. But in terms of those registered landlords, I will talk to the team in terms of how we address that and whether that's something.
Yeah, I mean, it's likely people are known to different organisations already, but the fear is always somebody falls between two stools, and there's big landlords on the East Midlands House in the Derwent and Metropolitan who have
Yeah.
hundreds, if not thousands, of homes across
Yeah.
the city and counting. They might spot something
yeah,
that
I
somebody
think-
else hasn't.
Yeah,
Do
absolutely.
they know where to go?
Absolutely. So we would, we need to make sure that we don't, if there are, that we can deal with referrals that come in as well, because
Of
obviously we
course.
have a finite capacity, so
Yeah,
we
yeah.
need to absolutely target our resources at those most at risk. So it would have to be a piece of work to look at that. But I'm not saying, probably we would. I'm sure we have some sort of referral process in
I'm
place.
sure you do.
But I need to. I'll get the details of that before I give you any.
All right, thank you. Protection, are you taking that as well,
I am,
Tom?
yes.
Excellent.
Okay, so within the protection function, so this is starting as members can see at 2.43. Fire safety audits, the completion of which in 23-24 was one of our key CRMP commitments. During the year, we completed 1,180 fire safety audits, and of those, 472 required informal action, with a further 44 formal enforcement notices being issued. And you can see figure 10 showing the number of fire safety audits delivered over the last 3 years as a month by month comparison. So clearly we were under target on this in the protection team. There's a few reasons for this. Following the introduction of the Building Safety Act, so the protection team have allocated resources to support this work stream, as we'll come on to at section 2.58, and that has taken capacity out of the team, unfortunately, to deliver that function. And additionally, we've had some significant work within the team, within our fire safety inspectors, undertaking the necessary qualifications to upskill them in line with the NFCC, so the National Fire Chiefs Council competency framework, which does remove capacity from the team, because they're quite significant qualifications that take a lot of time and quite a lot of work. So it's not meeting our target, but the rationale is there. And obviously this over the coming this year, we are redoubling our efforts to look at where we can get to in terms of meeting those CRMP targets. In quarter one of 24-25, we've completed 277 fire safety audits in line with the inspection methodology contained in our risk-based inspection programme. And I would like to assure members that these inspections are being undertaken in line with the RBIP. Obviously, you've seen our HMIC FRS inspection report, and obviously that is a key focus of our and the team moving forward in how we address that area for improvement to make sure that next time that report comes, we are performing to announce that to a good level. So in addition to completing 1,180 fire safety audits, fire safety inspectors continue to shadow inspections undertaken by supervisory managers as part of the business safety check development process. So these shadowed inspections take quite a lot of time because they are supporting response crews in achieving the business safety check qualification, and supports them to inspect premises alone as part of their warranted status. So in 23-24, the department shadowed 44 of these business safety checks, resulting in 85% of whole-time watches having at least one supervisory manager qualified to undertake that. And that work is actually starting to pay some quite significant dividends in terms of it's really identifying premises that would have previously under the risk-based inspection programme be quite low risk because they might be a takeaway of like one or two compartments. But thanks to the work of the response crews, they're going into these premises, finding people sleeping above in unsafe practices, unsafe fire safety, compartmentation, lack of alarm systems, that sort of thing, and highlighting that back into the protection team. So it's really contributing to making, in some cases, some very vulnerable people much, much safer. At 2.47, the completion of 1,000 business safety checks in 23-24 was a key commitment, and during the year the service completed 1,039, and in quarter 1, 24-25, we've completed 306 business safety checks. So that, and I anticipate that metric to improve as we get more supervisory managers qualified through the qualification, and we've got some work that myself and Andy are looking at in terms of how we roll out that training, how we supervise it, how we program it in, looking for succession planning, making sure that every watch has at least one person qualified. I think in terms of the target that we missed at the start of the report, I do want to assure members that there's a significant amount more than fire safety audits that gets completed within the protection team. And you can see at 2.48 a summary of that. So within 23-24, the team has done 175 post-fire inspections, so that's a inspection at our business premises post-fire. If they've had a fire, we will go and audit them and have a look at what's going on. 308 follow-ups to complaints, and 98% of which responded within our target of 2 working days, so a really, really significant achievement there. 47 enforcement notices, which is a 146% increase on 22-23. 21 prohibition notices, which is a 263% increase in 22-23. 641 building regulation consultations with local authority, building control or approved inspectors, 310 licensing consultations, and 437 other consultations. So there's a significant amount of work completed within the protection function, and it can come in at any point, and any one of them can be quite a significant piece of work in itself. So I would like to assure members that they are a busy team working very, very hard to create safe communities. At 2.49, we talk about false alarms. So I know Andy's mentioned it in his report already. And we've responded 23-24 to 4,411 false alarms, which is an increase as described previously in 22-23. And these are broken down into 3 areas, which I'm sure members will be aware of, in terms of a malicious false alarm, where someone is calling in a fire with the intention to get us to attend a non-existent incident. Good intent false alarms, which are made in good faith in the belief that we would need to attend, but it is found that no action is required. And then lastly, false alarm apparatus, which are calls initiated by a fire alarm operating, or where an alarm operates and a person then routinely calls the fire and rescue service as part of a standing arrangement, i.e. with no judgment involved, and then no further FRS action is required. And these are classified as unwanted fire signals. So figure 11 shows the number of false alarms attended each month between 21-22 and 23-24. And the CRMP set a target of 3% reduction in these. And in 23-24, we responded to 3,700, which constituted a 4% increase on 22-23. And again, it comes back to that sector-wide increase, the national increase in false alarms. We have missed that target. It is a very difficult thing to meet. And again, it is one of the reasons why we're bringing this paper back to committee next time to look at a strategy of how are we going to tackle this problem. Of those at 2.50, 747 at non-residential premises, with 420 of these at hospitals, and 2,604 were at residential premises. and 811 of these were at single occupancy houses or bungalows with single point detection and telecare or lifeline systems installed. So at 2.51, in terms of that assurance of process for members, following each unwanted fire signal, the premises owner for a non-domestic premise receives a letter from the service outlining their responsibilities in relation to fire safety. Following a fourth occurrence, the premises is contacted by the service's business education advocate, and a sixth occurrence prompts a full audit from a fire safety inspector. So we are getting into these premises and taking action. But some of them are, by their nature, i.e. hospitals, very high risk, significant number of detectives, many, many people working there with many, many different processes. So it is not always as simple as it would seem on the outside. So further work, as we've discussed previously, will be undertaken as part of the 25-28 CRMP to identify and work with premises to reduce the number of unwanted fire signals attended. And just reiterating that trend for an increasing number of attendance of these is a national one and not something that's confined to Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service. And we will always continue to work with responsible persons to reduce these incidents and utilise national best practice in their reduction where available. And I think that is worth reiterating around that support we will give to responsible people. We are here to support our communities. We work with businesses and responsible people at all times, and that enforcement activity, it's always a last resort. We want to work with people to reduce. Within the CRMP, this time there was a target for a 3% reduction of unwanted lift rescues for 23-24, and during the year we have responded to 181 lift rescues, which unfortunately is a 2% increase on 2022-23. And you can see at figure 12, that's just presented graphically for you over each month for the past 2 years. Moving on to 2.54, as members will be aware, the Joint Audit and Inspection Team, which is JATE, which is a collaboration between Nottingham City Council and Nottingham Fire and Rescue Service, in 23-24 conducted 22 inspections and 25 re-inspections, but in terms of those buildings, there was quite a significant number of flats and therefore residents involved. These inspections have covered 190 buildings in total. And whilst much work has been conducted, there are a further 21 buildings over 18 metres and 273 below 18 that require inspection. And there is a plan in place to ensure these buildings are inspected. Before I come on to that plan, in 2.55 you'll see that in Q1 this year, JATE has inspected 6 high-risk buildings. Rationale for that being the team has had some quite key vacancies within it. Obviously, that has led, and they have been in key posts, and that has led to some of those performance levels dropping. One of the key things that I'm focusing on in my role at the minute is that reinvigoration of JATE with our council partners, making sure we align our risk-based methodologies and make sure that you can rest assured that those buildings that present the highest risk will be inspected on a joint basis. All the while making sure that our risk-based inspection programme is delivered. And as the JATE becomes reinvigorated, I will be presenting performance figures to you in later reports. Moving on to 2.56, the Building Safety Act received Royal Assent during 23-24, and this has seen the creation of a new building safety regulator, with the Health and Safety Executive being appointed to lead on the regulation of new and existing buildings which fall within scope. And the agency has established several multidisciplinary teams made up of professionals from building control, fire safety and the housing sector to support their regulatory responsibilities. And the MDT will follow a regional model whereby NFRS has a requirement to support the building safety regulator through the provision of a fire safety inspector. So that's the thing I alluded to at the start, what I spoke about at the start of the report, in terms of one of our fire safety inspectors has become embedded within that function to make sure we are working collaboratively on the BSR work. And Home Office funding is being drawn down to support that work itself. At 2.59, the Fire Safety England regs in 2022 became law on 23rd of January and 23, and these place a number of statutory duties on responsible persons and Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service, particularly in buildings over 18 metres in height. So regulations place a duty on the fire service to provide a means of receiving and monitoring information from building owners relating to external wall system construction, deficiencies in fire safety equipment and building plans. And a process has been developed in conjunction with the NFCC and guidance and has been implemented to ensure national best practices followed. So we have a portal available for responsible people to report these to us. and that system is working well and receiving those reports as they come in. Last couple of points. The Fire Protection Department continues to communicate with all building owners within the scope of new regulations and existing regulations to raise their understanding and awareness of new legislation and existing legislation. And as a fire and rescue service, we continue to play an active role in supporting the development of new fire safety guidance in buildings which we regulate. So the protection team work in partnership with the NFCC by actively supporting consultations that drive industry best practice. The NFCC has recently published the most recent draft position statement, which relates to proposals relating to the installation of single staircases in residential buildings. And the support NFRS has provided as part of this consultation has influenced the proposed changes in building regulations, which I expect to be published during 2025. Do you have any questions?
Breathe for a minute there. Anything from anyone?
Yeah, you just said, for inspecting for those premises, businesses, and you say there's because there was a decrease because of there's a vacancy, isn't it?
And Jade, yes.
Yeah, Jade. So, what are we doing to recruit more people?
Yeah, so in terms of, from the fire service perspective, our Jade team has been established and in place. It's a collaborative piece of work with City Council. There have been some vacancies within that team for various different reasons, as I'm sure members will be aware. Those roles have been recruited to and filled, and there's a significant audit or reassurance process around how we are looking at Jade and reinvigorating that work. So it's a key part of my role, and I will be bringing reports to you around that at future meetings. Jade's a very important collaboration. Works in line with the regulators' code in terms of supporting business owners, making sure that when these buildings are inspected, they don't get swamped with multiple different people. They get one visit and one person to communicate with. So it's a really, really important way of communicating. Unfortunately, they do very often, because of the nature and the way we prioritise these inspections, they will be the buildings with the highest risk. So there might be many different factors that's affecting that rating and how we work with it. It can be fire safety, it can be elements under the Housing Act. So they're not quick fixes. They take significant work, and then we start getting into the remediation program around cladding and funding and how responsible people are accessing that, and the timescales that's going to take. So there's quite a lot, but quite a lot of work factors going into that. But the new methodology that I've asked the team to work on is looking at collating this information, making sure we address those highest risk, work with the City Council to get their highest risk buildings and address it moving forward. So I can assure you that is a really key function that we are concentrating on moving forward.
One of the other gaps was people doing this significant new training. Is that ongoing, or are we?
It's ongoing. A few people, we've had some excellent results in the team in terms of qualifications they've achieved. That's in terms of being fire engineering qualifications. There will always be ongoing training due to the support. It's one of our core values as a service in terms of how we support our people and how we develop them. And that development has direct benefits to the community in terms of their knowledge, their ability to assist with building regulation. So while there will be a decrease in that as people get qualified because the team is well resourced, that is always going to be an ongoing thing. But I think that's one of my challenges, to manage that within the team to keep addressing our targets.
Okay. Nick?
Yeah, I'll say a couple of things. Do we still have an issue with fire safety inspections in terms of retention and people taking jobs elsewhere? Is this an issue with the training? Is this behind a lot of it?
Within our team is quite set. I think fire safety inspectors are becoming very desirable in the private sector, and we train ours, as you would expect, to a high standard, and they are very professional and very, very competent. So there's always existing a risk that they will be recruited, which is both good for them and bad for us. But we have succession planning in place. We have recruitment processes ready to go. We have people in development getting trained up to those levels. So we do have assurance of that. But I'm afraid I can't assure you that no one would leave tomorrow if a private company came in and offered them a significant increase in money.
Yeah, no, I get it. I suppose there's not a lot we can do about that. We could perhaps, with another hat, look at other terms and conditions, I suppose. The other thing on here I was interested in, and there's a couple of things, is in terms of prohibition notices, obviously there's a substantial increase when you're looking at businesses. I think it says 263% increase on 22-23. With 2021, that seems to be quite high. And then the other thing I was thinking is that we've got the targets with, we talk about unwanted calls, etc., and alarms, but obviously we're failing to hit the target. And I'm just thinking, obviously there's an issue I know from sitting on other committees with the nature of the population changes, talking there about lots more single occupancy houses, older people, and there's a lot more, for want of a better word, care in the community where people are staying at home, aren't they, with alarms. This seems to me to be where they're going up, so we're going to be failing to meet our targets at all times because other services are letting people stay at home for good and bad reasons, I suppose. Therefore, as a result, we're going to have more of these problems, aren't we?
Potentially, and I think that's one of the key things we need to look at, of how we address this issue. So is there, if it is a single residence, maybe we can intervene more readily and quickly to reduce that. And we still need to, as you're well aware, we exist to support the community and provide that response. There are other factors affecting the increase in unwanted fire signals, some of which are beyond our control. So I think that's all I can do is assure you that that is a key focus within the team. And I think we need to look at how we address that and what we report in terms of those numbers moving forward, because we do need to reduce them because they are the use of an asset that could be doing something else.
I think just on that as well, so the 811 of those alarms which were at single occupancy houses, they are where people have had that care in the home support. So two things to note really. One, really sadly, the majority of the fatal fires that we saw last year involved those people, involved people who are care in the home, and we learn from each one of those tragic incidents, but it just shows the level of risk that those people have in their home. So we're working really closely with health and with partners to make sure that we try to mitigate that risk where we can. Also, you'll be aware of the City Council, the plans around a move to more care in home away from residential care, and we have contributed to the consultation around that so that we can continue to work particularly with the City Council in terms of making sure that where those decisions are made, we can help support those decisions and mitigate that risk. So I think that's really important. Just to go back to your first point around the increase in prohibitions, I think it touches on Tom's point earlier around the value of the business safety checks. So a lot of those prohibitions have involved properties and premises and businesses where we would previously not really have inspected because they were deemed lower risk. But we're seeing living above accommodation at takeaways or at shops and things like that, where we work with people, but where that risk is immediate, we will always take the necessary steps to make sure people are safe. And a large majority of those now are your smaller businesses where we're trying to do engagement. So hand in hand with that, we're now making a concerted effort to do targeted education for businesses, particularly in smaller communities. We've been to Hyson Green, we've been to various areas, Mansfield and areas in Worksop as well, to engage with those businesses where I think it's fair to say there is a lack of understanding around fire safety and the legislative requirements for them. So there is a big increase in prohibitions, but those are very much a benefit from the work that's been done now.
And we've really focused on delivering that in different languages with different people, those cultural considerations, making sure that we provide that support initially and don't turn up and be surprised if someone doesn't speak the language we expect.
I've got like a small, we're talking about retention here, isn't it? You know, like obviously we spend a lot of money to train those officers. So like when we just give them the contract job, we should have like a clause there, like they should be there like minimum 2 years, something. I don't know, we could do work something to retain those officers so they don't go to private sector.
Yeah, we've looked at many things, especially around the engineering qualifications. I think like Tom says, we can train them up and worry we'll lose them, or not train them up and stay with us. So we try our best, and I think first and foremost we'll always invest in our staff. And like Tom says, we've got a really dedicated group in fire protection, and credit to them, they do a fantastic job and they embrace, and there's a lot of personal commitment to this development as well. So I think we offer that and really support it, but absolutely retention is something we need to really look at and focus on. But hopefully we'll help with the retention, with the working environment as well, and the way that we support them. So
Do it on the HR committee, can't we? Hopefully?
I think it's an important point. I mean, for certain specialist qualifications, most councils have a 2-year clause
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
if you leave within 2 years, you
You
pay
have to
that
pay for the
council
money.
that course back. And are you were waiting patiently?
Well, thank you, Chair. In fact, I already asked the question. I think well ahead today. Anyway, I like to look at the numbers, and well, I can see that I mean, you already touched on this term, on the CMP's commitment to completing 1,500 by achieving only 1,800. Why is the reason for this? I mean, why have we been unable to meet that requirement?
Yeah, so the reasons, some of which are outlined in the report in terms of those qualifications, in terms of support to the building safety regulator. And again, a fire safety audit is a very complex process. So you can go and do a fire safety audit and it can be relatively simple because the building is simple, it has minimal people, minimal risk. If you can go and do a fire safety audit that turns into a very significant piece of work. So there is no set sort of time that a fire safety audit will take. You know, it can't be an hour's work. Some of these can turn into several days work at least in terms of the outcomes from it. So that's something that we're working hard to address because we just don't know what we're going to find. And I think another key factor within the sort of failure to meet that target is our teams are working hard in their geographical locations every day, and then we can get a building that is reported to us through a complaint or through our inspection process that becomes quite a significant risk for various different reasons, whether it's lack of fire safety provision, lack of escape routes, unsafe structures, cladding, poor management, and those buildings can then go all the way to prosecution, and that can take weeks worth of work, all the way to quite lengthy and significant meetings with our barrister to make sure that when we do take this to court, we have a very good success rate. And I think that's something I can report to you in future reports around when we do go to court. We go after having exhausted all available options for consultation and working with the individual. When we do go, following a significant amount of work, we tend to
So do you have
get a positive outcome.
do you have 100% success rate then? Yeah,
I think we do, but I'm hesitant to say out loud in this meeting, so I will report that in terms of, and I will get that information to you. I think we do have 100% success rate in that, but I will confirm that because of the work we do up to it. But that work takes such a lot of time, and that is all under, this is from that one fire safety audit, and then while they're doing that, they can't do others, and it takes multiple resources from the team because we have a peer review process. We review what our decisions that we've made with different fire and rescue services. We have a very holistic approach to that and take it very, very seriously. And that would be the reason that we're not quite hitting that target. And again, everything we do, we want to do to the highest standard.
I will just add to that as well. I think when we wrote the last CRMP, so we're just coming up to our new CRMP, and a bit of a plug for people to please feedback on that. But the last CRMP was very much around driving productivity, and I think the process around identifying those targets was very much around stretch targets and really trying to increase productivity. Maybe without the science behind it. I think our new CRMP targets are very much a better methodology around trying to increase in productivity. Our fire protection team have year on year increased their figures. They haven't been to the target in the CRMP, but there have been a significant increase against this backdrop of increased work in every area. I think that's really key. And also, in terms of the national statistics, we're very much in that top quartile in terms of the amount of premises we're inspecting. So there's a level of assurance there that whilst it didn't meet our target, that might have been a bit of an arbitrary target. The ambition was to push performance. It's definitely done that, and credit to the team in terms of reaching those numbers that they've done.
David, can I just follow on with that? And I think it's just reminded me of a statistic in our HMIC report, which said that our fire safety inspectors are 3 times more productive than the national average. So there is, again, assurance for you that we are working really, really hard. And what I don't want that target to become an all-consuming quest when the work they're producing is of the right standard, at the right level, to the right people, and very, very successful.
So a silly question. Sorry. How do you, how do you pick the premises to go and visit them or inspect them? What is the criteria?
So we have a risk-based inspection programme. So that's the the fundamental underpinnings of all of our risk inspections. So within that risk-based inspection program, which is essentially a big collation of risk factors, so that would be building height, presence of cladding, number of people, construction, previous history of fire, where it is, if it is a risky building on some other aspect of our risk-based methodology in terms of response crews, and because it presents structural difficulties, that sort of thing. That information is assigned a score, and then it goes into that system, and essentially the one that comes out with the biggest score, that's our number one risk, and we inspect that. And we inspect that on a 3-yearly cycle of addressing the highest risk properties.
So it may be some of the business maybe never had a visit from us.
Yeah.
Yes, well, that's inevitably the case, but that business would be a single person shop, for example,
Right.
that presents very little heritage risk, no risk to others. If there is a fire, it would, it's not going to cause catastrophic loss of life, that sort of thing. But I think that just reinforces the value of the business safety checks that response crews are doing, because they are going into these premises because their qualification necessarily is the level below our fire safety inspectors.
Right.
They go and do the more simple properties, in inverted
Yes.
commas.
It's like a spot check, go to any
Yeah, spot
business
check, and they would look at
yeah.
certain things, but they're warranted, and they have an accredited professional qualification that's accredited by Skills for Justice. So again, an aspect of our work that other fire and rescue services don't do is that we professionally qualify our response crews to do that. And they are addressing those and going into those buildings that perhaps have never had an inspection before by the nature of the risk they present, and they are actually finding some risk in there.
Yeah.
So it's a really positive sort of top-down and bottom-up approach, and aiming to mitigate the risk in our community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I just wanted to touch on the, that unwanted lift rescues. I can see there is some opportunity there. Well, there is a slight increase, but what additional measure can be implemented in terms of educating the building managers and residents as well? What is in?
Yeah, I think the lift rescue is a tricky one, because it's probably not an emergency unless you are in that lift, and it can present a significant issue. I know an elderly relative of mine was recently trapped in the lift, and there's quite some serious implications for the individual she was trapped in there with. We work with building owners as part of the process of inspections. Mm-hmm. We educate as part of our business safety education. So there are probably some more things we can do in terms of call challenging when those.
Do you mind if I ask how often do you do that?
In terms of call challenging?
Yeah, how often?
Call challenging is we do it a lot for unwanted fire signals within control. Mm-hmm. We train our control operators to challenge those calls in terms of is there another facility to use? Who is the responsible person? But very often not very often. We always operate on a humanitarian basis. Mm-hmm. So I know in my previous role before I was in this temporary, these sorts of calls are the one that comes to that decision maker, that duty group manager. Mm-hmm. And if you have an individual in a lift, we would very often mobilise because it's the right thing to do. And not only that, but because of the training we've given our crews, when they go to that lift, all of a sudden they will find things and they will start looking at it with a critical eye, and it may then come back into the business audit process. So the lift rescues is a tricky one. It's not a significant impact on our capability. It is relatively low numbers, and it has got benefits in other areas. But there is, looking at it with a fresh set of eyes in the team, there are maybe other things we can do.
That's good. Thank you.
If we're all done, thank you, Tom. That was a good hour and a quarter on the first paper. So a good discussion, I think. So next we're on the service... we're not. We're on the National Resilience paper, which starts at page 29. Damien.
Thank you, Chair. A quicker paper, members will be pleased to hear. So this is really an assurance check of our national resilience capabilities. So whilst we respond to communities in Nottingham, Nottinghamshire primarily, we also support the national resilience, and that really came around since 2001, the terrorist attacks in the USA, and then the focus on the UK government, English government, to deal with that threat. So we provide a number of assets which contribute to that national resilience and that coordination. And then annually we have the National Resilience Assurance Team who come and assess us against key criteria for each of those capabilities. So I'll just take members through the outcomes of those assurance checks, and generally a very positive message for us all. So we in Nottinghamshire host a MTA, so marauding terrorist attack capability. So in the event of a terrorist attack or a marauding terrorist attack, which we've seen in other areas, we have the ability to respond to that, and that's part of our national resilience response. The good news is that that was graded as 26 instances out of 27, so 26 of the areas were good and one was outstanding. Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service were commended for good practices and a commitment to maintaining standards throughout our assessment period, and we were reported to be in a very strong position to respond to a terrorist attack should that occur. So really positive, obviously a critical area, something we hope we never have to use, but something we take very seriously, and we have a real high level of assurance against that. Hand in hand with our marauding terrorist capabilities are national interagency liaison officers. So these are the officers who will work across police, ambulance, fire, and also other specialist assets in the event of both marauding terrorist type incidents, but also on our day-to-day activity as well within the county. We work very closely with the police and ambulance in maintaining that capability. In section 2.7 it highlights we have 19 areas of substantial assurance, 4 areas of adequate assurance and 2 areas of limited assurance. And the 2 areas of limited assurance both relate to our operating with neighbouring Fire and Rescue Service NILO capability. So slightly out of our control. It's something we're continuing to work on, and I've recently met with principal officers from all of our neighbouring counties to reaffirm that commitment to regional training and make sure that we are working effectively together there. So we hope to see that improve very soon. Flood rescue was also a capability that we provided nationally. It should be noted by members that we're currently not providing this capability because it's conducted on a voluntary basis, and sadly we're unable to maintain that at the moment. However, when we were assessed, 9 areas of the 10 were graded as good and 1 area requiring improvement. And that 1 area of improvement was around the repatriation of equipment back into service, so around decontamination and making sure that it's reassessed after use. We have now addressed that, so we are assured that if we were reassessed, or if that occurs, then we would be good in that area as well. So we've purchased additional equipment and also carried out extra training for our flood rescue responders. So again, a positive, really positive area, and credit to the people who have been involved in that. One of our high-profile areas of national resilience is the high-volume pump capability. So these are the pumps that deliver vast quantities of water and have been deployed at pretty much every significant flooding incident we've seen across England over the last decade. Really proud of our approach to this. However, the report was a bit of a shock because it highlighted 12 areas of requires improvement. However, that was because of a change in the assessment criteria that had not quite had the clarity around communication in that. So we've addressed all of those areas and they've now all been reassessed as good. So it reflects very much the capability that we feel we have here. Really proud of our crews who deliver that capability. And then the final one was enhanced logistical support. However, in April 2024, it was decided by National Resilience that our capability would no longer continue in that area, and they rationalised the number of responses. So that ended in April. However, I would just like to put on record the thanks to all the crews who delivered that on a national basis over the last decade. So overall, a really high level of assurance builds on the performance reports we've seen both through our HMIC report and also our internal audits. So really grateful to that. One thing I would just like to highlight to members in section 3.2 is around the funding position for these national resilience capabilities. And the key one there in terms of our marauding terrorist and NILO grant is a reduction. Previously we had £56,000 per year. That's been reduced to under £20,000 per year. But we are maintaining the same capabilities with that. But members will be aware with the financial challenges we're facing going forward, that is something we're having to prioritise as an absolute critical area, but now being funded from the normal service revenue budget in terms of maintaining that. So with the increasing and current financial pressures and reduction in grants that we're seeing across those, we are making those decisions to maintain those capabilities internally from the revenue streams. So that is a positive message overall, but happy to take any questions, Chair, if there are any.
Thank you, Damien. Nick?
No, generally speaking, it's really good news. I think we've done really well with sometimes a few resources. The only point I'd make, I suppose, put on the record is perhaps we should be lobbying, talking to our MPs, what you've just been speaking about there, because that reduction in funding is significant. And anyone looking at the tragedies going on around the world today, I think we're more likely to be seeing marauding terrorism rather than less. So that's not really on. So I think perhaps you should look at saying something to the new government and say, look, we need to have properly funding. I know we have this conversation all the time, but yeah.
Yeah, just on that, Councillor, I know that the Chief Officer and our Treasurer are writing to MPs presently as part of a coordinated approach from National Fire Chiefs Council around lobbying, both in terms of capital funding, but also the ability as we enter that budget setting period this year. I'm aware the Chief Officer has also contacted all newly elected MPs after the recent election, and there are plans being put in place for him to meet with them in Westminster to exactly put that message across around the financial challenges that we are facing over the medium-term financial plan. So there are definite steps being taken, but we would obviously continue that conversation.
That's great. If we can help in any way, we'd be delighted to.
I wonder, Nick, through your party structure, whether, I mean, there can't be a better advocate in Parliament than Michael, who's as well versed on some of these challenges, to see whether he can make sure that stuff from our committee, which he might not see, is on his desk as well for him to
I'll mention
speak
it to him,
about in
absolutely.
Parliament. Okay. Is there anybody else on this paper?
Well, brilliant. I mean, as always, I mean, your report was brilliant. Thank you.
Okay. That's it. You're off for the hook easily then.
Thank you, Chair.
Everybody can't wait for item 6. That's what it is. So the evaluation to changes at Ashfield Fire Station Crim, which starts on page 37, which reads fantastically. Andy, are you taking this paper?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, as members will know, on the 29th of November last year, 2023, Ashfield Fire Station was returned to a 24-hour whole-time crewing. Prior to that, we'd changed the make of the station to be day shift crewing. So November last year, it returned to 24-hour whole-time. What this report talks around is a comparison of the 9 months since November last year to the previous year, so we can really get a feel of the improvements that have happened, particularly in Ashfield District, because of that decision. So as I say, all the data and comparisons contained within this report compare performance in the 9 months post that implementation of returning back to whole time, so from the 1st December 23 to the 31st of August this year, with the same time period in the preceding year. So to start, I think it is really worth noting that reinstating 24-hour whole-time crewing at Ashfield was done within the confines of the current whole-time establishment. So there was no additional recruitment, there was no additional cost. What it did entail was the movement of 30 members of staff across the whole-time establishment. And really, really pleasingly, I think the proactive engagement that took place over that period directly with staff, with representative bodies and with internal and external stakeholders enabled those 30 moves to take place with very, very little disruption. We received not a single grievance or complaint as a service, and the whole process was as smooth as it could be. Now, during the reporting period, just for context on the report, post the implementation and the return of whole-time cover at Ashfield District, we've attended 469 incidents within the district. And for comparison, same time period the previous year, we'd attended 433. So incidents have gone up slightly. A key consideration in the decision to reinstate 24-hour whole-time crewing at Ashfield was the predicted impact it would have on attendance times in the area. During the post-implementation reporting period, attendance times in Ashfield District have averaged 7 minutes and 24 seconds. And you'll remember from the initial report on service delivery performance, our target is 8 minutes. So within Ashfield District, we are performing very, very well in the last 9 months. prior to the re-implementation of 24-hour cover in Ashfield District, that mobilisation time had been 8 minutes and 36 seconds within that district, so outside of our target. So the impact of reinstating 24-hour whole-time crewing at Ashfield Fire Station has contributed to a improvement in that average attendance time within the district. The improvement is 1 minute and 12 seconds, so really, really significant improvement. And it far exceeds actually what we'd anticipated to be the case. We undertook a lot of modelling around what the impact would be, and we were working on the assumption that the improvement would be around 48 seconds. So it's bettered out, best hopes really, which is really, really positive. In addition, that improvement that's been found in Ashfield District has not had a detrimental impact on attendance times throughout the rest of the county. So county-wide attendance time since the implementation of the 24-hour whole-time crewing back into Ashfield has been 8 minutes and 1 second. Prior to the implementation, it had been 4 seconds slower. So again, really positive news story. Now, facilitating the reinstatement of 24-hour whole-time crewing at Ashfield Fire Station has meant a reduction in establishment numbers at other stations. That's how we've been able to do it within the existing overall whole-time establishment. However, this has not resulted in a reduction in appliance availability elsewhere. So during the post-implementation reporting period, whole-time appliance availability across the county has been 99.2%. So during the pre-implementation period, it was actually slightly less than that at 99.1%. Now, the reinstatement has also had a very positive impact on the number of times that appliances from our neighbours in Derbyshire have had to cross the border to support us within Nottinghamshire. So during the reporting period post-implementation, there have been 30 occasions when appliances from Derbyshire have come across the border into the Ashfield District to support incidents. Prior to that, it happened on 68 occasions. There's no issue with neighbouring support. We work on the basis of nearest appliance, and it's absolutely fine under what we call our 13-16 arrangements. But clearly, us being more self-sufficient now is a positive because it impacts attendance times and so on and so forth. So again, that is a really good element of the reinstatement. So what we've in effect done is we've created an additional 2 whole-time watches at Ashfield Fire Station, and what this has meant is a significant improvement in productivity of our deliverable services within Ashfield District. So Tom, in his initial report, spoke about how we deliver safe and well visits and business safety checks. So within Ashfield District, post the implementation of whole-time crewing again, safe and well visit completion has increased by 93% within Ashfield District, which means that we have reached 736 homes within Ashfield in the 9 months post whole-time reinstatement. Comparison to the previous year, we reached 381. So real significant improvements in terms of making those communities safe within Ashfield. And similarly, when it's come to business safety checks, the improvement's been even greater, a 250% increase on businesses being supported within Ashfield, where it's risen from 21 prior to the change to 75 post the change. Similarly, a further benefit has been around our community befriending scheme. So every whole-time watch and on-call section are tasked with befriending a community group to work with over 12 months to really target groups which perhaps wouldn't traditionally interact with the service. Now, having that additional 2 whole-time watches at Ashfield means that this year we are working with 5 community groups within the district, whereas prior to that we were working with fewer. Now, a consequence of reinstating 24-hour whole-time crewing in Ashfield Fire Station has been a reduction in the number of incidents attended by the on-call section that's based there. Now, post-implementation, during that 9-month reporting period, on-call crews have been mobilised to 107 incidents. Now, prior to the return to whole-time, the 9-month comparison period the year before, they'd attended 245 incidents. So it's a significant 56% reduction in incidents being attended by on-call crews. Now, that's some concern to us because being mobilised to incidents is a key retention factor when it comes to on-call employees. Now, since the reinstatement of the 24-hour whole-time crewing in Ashfield Fire Station has lost 2 on-call firefighters. However, the exit interviews with those 2 firefighters have highlighted that actually the reasons for them leaving has had nothing to do with the reduction in calls. It's actually been due to one individual moving house and out of the area, and another a change in their primary employment. So alongside the positive impact on retention, the promise of being mobilised to instance can also have a positive impact on recruitment for the on-call. Now, pleasingly, the reduction in on-call mobilisation since the reinstatement of 24-hour whole-time cover does not appear yet to have had any detrimental impact in this area. We in fact have recruited 2 new firefighters for Ashfield on-call post the implementation of the change. So one of those new trainees is currently undertaking our course at our Learning and Development Centre, and a further individual will be starting in January. So we've lost 2 during the process, but we've gained another 2, which is really positive. Now, any dissatisfaction with the reduction in mobilisations from the on-call section would often manifest itself in a reduced availability for the on-call section. However, during the reporting period post-implementation, the availability of the on-call section at Ashfield Fire Station has been 92.39%. It puts it in top 5 availability for on-call stations across the county. And this is worthy of note because it actually, not only does it exceed our target of 85% availability, but it does in fact actually improve on where they were pre the implementation, where availability was 90.1%. Now, the reduction of on-call mobilisations in and around Ashfield District as a result of reinstating 24-hour whole-time cover has also contributed to a cost saving. Now, alongside the impact for Ashfield on-call section as previously described in the reduction, that 56% reduction in incident turnouts, Hucknall on-call station has also experienced an 18% reduction in their incident attendances. This means there's been a reduction in attendance fees, disturbance allowances and turnout payments for crews at both Ashfield and Hucknall, which, when we include on costs of national insurance and pension on costs, has actually created a saving of £46,000 for the service. Now, these savings have contributed to a net £65,000 underspend, which we are currently forecasting for on-call pay, which will assist us when it comes to the rebanding of on-call pay retaining fees that begins from January, where all on-call firefighters having an uplift in their retaining fees, which again is positive. Now, it is also reassuring that despite the significant change that has been made at Ashfield Station, responses from employees that are based there to the recent staff satisfaction survey have shown some marked improvements to the same questions that were asked in 2022, so prior to the change. For example, those at Ashfield Station who intend to stay with the service for at least the next 12 months has increased by 8.8 percentage points and sits at 82%, which is really, really high. Those who would recommend the service as a great place to work has increased by 15.2 percentage points, and those who enjoy their job has increased by 11.6 percentage points. So all these metrics that we're looking at, which would any dissatisfaction would manifest itself, has not been proven to be the case. Now, we continue to monitor the impacts of the change, and we will continue to monitor them going forward, as well as the impacts on the wide ridership. Now, what we do is, on a quarterly basis, we conduct what we call our service delivery evaluation assurance group, and lots of these metrics that we're talking about now are considered in detail at that function. So that is the report. I'm very, very happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you, Andy. I mean, there's scarcely in my 15 years on this authority been a better report, I think. I just don't think there has, where it's saved money and improved services. And I mean, I can only keep going on record that I'm very grateful to the authority as a whole for listening to me, and particularly the residents of Ashfield, that this was the right thing to do. But clearly the staff surveys bear that out, the finances bear that out, the attendance times bear that out, and everything else now. So, I mean, there's not a lot to wax lyrical. Damien and I spent a good morning there a few months ago talking to the staff, and it was palpable that they felt valued, and that overall that they'd been listened to. Of course, Ashfield's the most populous and district in Nottinghamshire, and it has the highest number of any houses of any district in Nottinghamshire. We all know it's strategically placed on the M1 corridor. and for financial reasons, those decisions were made some years ago. But clearly, for financial reasons and everything else, this was the right decision to do it. And it's nice to see it in black and white that the things we thought and felt were right as well. So I think we need to pass on our thanks to the staff and unions for them being so amenable to that overall movement around, because it's paid dividends. I'm really pleased that staff are so happy with those changes. I have passion, obviously. I live about 100 yards from there and it's in my division, but I do think it was the right thing to do, and I'm really pleased that the reports bear that out as well. Do any other members have any questions?
You said it all.
I mean, I said it all, to be honest. Yeah, I echo with you, to be honest.
Thank you. Do we have to... So we do have to formally vote this time. So are members happy to take the recommendations? I'll move them. They are on page...
Section 10, just
Where are we? Page 42. So note the reports, but then take this through to the full authority for them to have the report as well. So we're all happy to accept that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Andy. It made me smile. Happy man. And so then we're on item 7, which is occupational therapy paper. Are you, Tom, taking
Yes.
that? Page 45.
So I'm very pleased to bring this paper to the committee around how we've embedded occupational therapy within our structure and within our work in the community safety engagement team. So just take you through the background. The National Fire Chiefs Council, the NFCC, clearly endorses a holistic approach to fire prevention activities, so recognising the need for that person-centred approach when dealing with vulnerable individuals in their own homes. And NFRS has utilised an OT within our prevention department as it was, and now community safety engagement team, since September 2020 in order to provide that wider range of services to the most vulnerable members of our community. Whilst it was originally a secondment into the department from the National Health Service with temporary funding, it is now, while it still remains a seconded role, the funding has been substantiated as part of our establishments. It's built within our established budgets to have this ability to provide an occupational therapist, and that was part of the Futures 25 work stream from in restructuring that prevention department into the community safety and engagement team. And I think it's really interesting and a great news story that Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service remains the only fire service in the country to employ an occupational therapist. So this report summarises the work and results of that OT role for members. So moving into the body of the report then, obviously the OT offers home visits to occupiers where it's clear that they would benefit from specialist interventions, and it's usually those who score highly on our Charlie matrix, which I've spoken about earlier. And the core role of the OT visit is to undertake a holistic functional assessment of an individual's ability to carry out daily tasks. And typically, we focus on cooking, smoking, use of electrical equipment, the ability to respond to and raise an alarm, and to evacuate to and or stay in a place of safety. So some really person-centred approaches. As members will be aware, smoking is one of those significantly high-risk activities, especially in those for whom other tasks are becoming increasingly difficult, and where appropriate, the OT will complete cognitive screening for memory impairment, signpost to specialist teams, provide equipment and minor adaptations to help people smoke safely in their own home. And the OT can purchase bespoke specialist equipment such as flame retardant aprons or mats to be truly responsive to the individual's needs and reduce wastage when some of our more standard equipment would be inappropriate or just wouldn't be used by the individual. In order to prevent no duplication of work and ensure our limited resources are targeted at those most in need, if the OT recognises that another professional and or service is already involved in the individual's care, we will ensure that the services OTs then only provide that sort of long arm advice and support, so we don't duplicate work and we don't get in the way of each other. Within the department, and in order to ensure best practice, we have introduced some evaluation measures to make sure that the OT's work is suitable and that we're delivering the interventions we need to those most in need. And those are listed there in 2.5 for members in terms of reduction on the Charlie score post the intervention of the occupational therapist, reduction or elimination of fire instances within 3 and 12 months of the OT intervention, use of the East Kent outcome score to record the number of SMART goals achieved with each client and any reasons for poor outcomes, qualitative case studies, and then client and carer feedback through NHS feedback forms. And I'd like to draw your attention in terms of feedback methodologies in terms of 2.6, since March 24, utilising those ECOS outcomes, the OT has discharged 34 patients, each of whom has a personalised care plan with goals relating to reducing fire risk. And the average success rate for meeting the goals set by the OT is 84%, giving some of the most vulnerable members of Nottinghamshire's community a tangible and measurable improvement in their quality of life. So really dealing with those individuals who are most at risk of fire and who, clearly are presenting significant vulnerabilities. But moving forward, this data will provide a robust body of evidence which can be scrutinised to improve the efficiency, referral criteria and type of interventions offered, as well as capturing valuable evidence of the goals achieved with those where the Charlie score may not reduce even after significant interventions. So whilst the OT delivers some fantastic things, we are always mindful of the capacity of the people with whom we deal, making sure that everything is conducted with that individual, and we would never impose things. And where they have capacity to live in a certain way, unfortunately, some people do choose to live unsafely. So even after all of our intervention, we still might not see a reduction in that Charlie score. But that is, by the nature, a person-centred approach, with that individual. So moving on to another one of the OT's core roles in terms of triage of mental health and wellbeing. So the OT triages all safe and well visit questionnaires where a response crew or specialist home safety operative records concerns about an occupier's mental health or well-being. And if appropriate and necessary, these concerns are then raised with the GP or the relevant mental health teams within the county. And this not only helps to minimise the individual's risk from fire and ensure appropriate treatment is actioned, and it also reduces delays and duplication, so really accesses support quickly for those individuals. So presently, an average of 11 cases a week are triaged as per the previous point, and whilst we anticipate this will increase as further training for response crews and specialist home safety operatives is delivered under the new structure, since the 1st of January 24, 413 cases have been triaged, with 40% resulting in further action, such as liaison with the individual's GP or secondary care team, or resulting in an occupational therapist visit. And I think it's clear that these activities have directly contributed to making individuals safer in their own homes, and importantly, expediting their access to essential services. So a really critical link into partner agencies and referral pathways for those individuals. In terms of the support the OT offers to the team, since the introduction of the role, they've held a weekly drop-in case clinic, which has been provided for all prevention team members, where cases can be discussed confidentially to ensure the right support is given to individuals with complex needs. And that peer support as a form of clinical supervision has been proven to improve job satisfaction, staff retention, which we've talked about in a previous paper, that reduce the stress and anxiety within those teams, create a better working environment and increase the quality of care delivery. So some really important outcomes from that intervention, from that work. As the new community safety and engagement team structure is embedded, the OT role will continue to support the team and the wider service to support the most vulnerable and complex members of our community. In each case, the most comprehensive multidisciplinary approach possible will be delivered, and advice will be offered on a case-by-case basis, and it will include considerations of things like where fire risk is elevated by health conditions, where mental capacity around fire risk is queried and best interest decisions are being recommended under the Mental Capacity Act, with occupiers who hoard and or self-neglect, which heightens their fire risk, and where evidence is needed to support an increase in care provision. This is underpinned by access to the RIO system, which is Secondary Health Services Risk Management System, and the Services Information Sharing Agreement with Nottinghamshire Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust. So again, just reassuring that link into secondary care, and that we are sharing information appropriately and within the bounds of that agreement. Lastly, within this section, the NFRS, or Nottinghamshire's Occupational Therapist, has co-authored an education package for the Royal College of Occupational Therapy, which was launched online in May 2024, with a print article published in the OT News magazine. This has been endorsed by the NFCC and Nottinghamshire Healthcare, and has a potential reach of 36,000 members. So, our occupational therapist is really undertaking a valuable role and is really an expert in their field, and making a significant difference to the interventions we provide. So moving on to service development at section 2.15 in the report, the OT role is fundamental to supporting departmental and service-wide improvements to our procedures. And within the Year 1 Annual Delivery Plan in the next CRMP, there's going to be some clear projects that the OT is going to be involved in, which is the development of tiered education resources for operational personnel and prevention staff to standardise safe and well visits and promote best practice in how we communicate the awareness of consent and associated mental health legislation, documentation and information governance, and awareness of relevant health conditions. So providing that support to our response crews when they are going into these premises where we are meeting vulnerable individuals. Enhanced partner education, which is an ambitious aim to deliver bespoke local education sessions to health and social care colleagues. A recent example occurring in September 24, where the OT delivered smoking cessation services and an understanding of emollients and use of oxygen, therefore increasing partners' knowledge and ensuring appropriate referrals are received into departments. Obviously, as I'm sure members are aware, that use of emollient cream, which are very often paraffin-based, use of oxygen presents a significantly increased risk of fire. And it's part of that referral pathway that we've talked about previously in the meeting around how we are educating our partners that they can refer these people into us and we can then go and make interventions to make these individuals safer. The OT will also review utilised equipment to ensure suitability and cost effectiveness of that standard provision, as well as use of a small budget to buy equipment based on individual need for high and very high risk individuals. And they will contribute to the NFS response to the NFCC smoking toolkit, which includes best practice documentation for that smoking assessment, education for professional partners for smoking as a high risk activity to encourage that appropriate referral pathway, the development of resources to promote smoking safety with care agencies, and liaison with local statutory partners to embed smoking within their assessment documentation. And then lastly, within the 25-28 CRMP timeline, further projects will include Carers Hub of resources to promote fire prevention awareness in private care agency staff, the development of pathways to support referrals at the point of hospital discharge, and a review of the Charlie Matrix and the triage and scoring methodology of safe and well visits to make sure we're targeting the people that are most in need. And I think I'd just like to draw members' attention to two of the implications within that, within the report, certainly at section 5 on the equalities and ethical implications, that this really does demonstrate the service's commitment to the core code of ethics, most notably putting our communities first and treating our members of our community with dignity and respect. But importantly, on a corporate risk basis, that provision of that OT mitigates against the service's recognised corporate risk of preventable deaths, ensuring the most effective and suitable interventions are made to those who present the greatest risk or have the most significant vulnerability. I'll be love to take any questions on our OT division.
Thank you very much. Anyone?
Comprehensive.
Brilliant report.
It is. Tom, the print article that was published in the magazine, can you circulate
Certainly
that to
can.
members
Yeah.
so that we can see it? Because obviously that seems
She'd be
to...
very happy to. Yes, so she's really keen to. She's very proud of her work. And
Yeah, I'm not sure we all want to do the full course, but I think it'd be nice for us to see that article at least, if members are happy to circulate that. If there's nothing else, thank you for your reports, officers. They were lengthy and very detailed, so thank you for your time on that, and I'll happily call this meeting to an end. Thank you.